As far as we are concerned, Alfred Hitchcock was not only a director of suspense films. He made us feel uneasy, intrigued, and complicit. And in the case of Rear Window, he may have extended the boundaries of acceptable behavior a little bit too far. The reason for this is that when the production of this now iconic murder mystery came to an end, the cast and crew did not throw a typical Hollywood party. Champagne toasts and polite speeches are not permitted. As an alternative, they gathered around something that was somewhat more intimate, somebody or something that resembled the body of one of their co-stars. However, they did consume it. However, we will return to that later. The film Rear Window, which was released in 1954, was not only a commercial success. From an artistic standpoint, it was a defining moment for Hitchcock. It was a production that cost $1 million, but ended up grossing more than $36 million. Not only did it combine technical precision and razor-sharp storytelling, but it also included a provocative subtext that critics are still trying to decipher to this day. And just like the man himself, the movie was just as preoccupied with what people look like as it was with what they are concealing from the world. The protagonist of the story is L.B. Jeff Jeffries is a war photographer who is confined to a wheelchair. James Stewart portrays Jeff Jeffries in the film. After being involved in an accident, Jeff spends his days observing the people who live in the apartment complex that is located directly across the courtyard from his New York apartment. He watches Miss Torso, the flirtatious dancer, Miss Lonely Hearts, the sad spinster, a couple with a dog, a struggling songwriter, some newlyweds, and a whole cast of characters who are unaware that they are being watched by him and by us. He watches all of these people. This is the true magic trick that Hitchcock masters. There is more to him than just making the audience watch. The fact that we enjoy it is made to feel guilty by him. And when Jeff begins to suspect that one of his neighbors, a traveling salesman named Lars Thorwald, may have been responsible for the murder of his wife, we don't just cheer for him. We become his accomplice. Along with him, we squint. It is through the use of a telephoto lens that we examine grainy shadows. And there we are, unable to move, watching helplessly as his girlfriend makes her way into the apartment of a person who is suspected of murdering him. By the way, that girlfriend is Grace Kelly's character, Lisa Fremont, who is portrayed by her. Let's get this straight now. In this film, Grace Kelly did not merely appear as a guest star. She seemed to enter it as if she were dreaming. The moment she walked in, she became history. A man who does not fully appreciate her is leaning in for a kiss while she is dressed to the nines, bathed in gentle light, and leaning in for the kiss. That kiss is cinematic in and of itself. Nevertheless, Kelly was not the only woman who caught people's attention across the courtyard. Georgine Darcy, who played the role of Miss Torso, arrived. To clarify, she was not a dancer who worked professionally. It was Hitchcock's express prohibition that she should not take any classes. Instead of a polished performer, he wanted her to move in a way that was more akin to a real girl practicing in her apartment. As a result, she did. As a matter of fact, she spent the majority of the shoot in her small apartment set, where she continued to lounge around in her costume between takes. Let's be honest, the majority of the items were lingerie. With the entire cast and crew watching, she let her guard down and began to dance. Similar to Jeff, just like the rest of us. Now is the point where things begin to become unclear. The movie itself is a masterclass in suspense, and it was shot entirely from Jeff's apartment, with the exception of a few scenes that were extremely important. Is it the set? A remarkable feat of engineering, the largest indoor construction constructed by Paramount. At the time, it took 50 men 2 months to construct the building, which included 31 actual apartments, 12 of which were fully furnished, and had access to running water and electricity. Because of its enormous size, they had to excavate the floor of the soundstage in order to make room for the outside courtyard. Was it a window on the second floor that appeared to be Jeff's? In point of fact, the baseline. As for the illumination, it's not real. Over 1,000 arc lights and 2,000 smaller ones were used to simulate the various times of the day. The heat that they produced was so intense that it once caused the sprinkler system to go off, which resulted in the set being flooded. The only thing Hitchcock requested was an umbrella. Even the sound was subject to this meticulous attention to detail, which extended to everything. The majority of it is a diegetic device. It is what Jeff hears that you hear. Music is heard coming from the direction of the songwriter's window. The party is going on upstairs. In complete silence, a woman sobs. The experience is engrossing, unsettling, and profoundly human. Despite the fact that Hitchcock had complete control, he rarely communicated with his actors. Later on, James Stewart stated that the line, "the scene feels tired," was the most direction he had ever received. In spite of this, Stewart was completely focused. He went so far as to accept profit participation rather than a salary, which was an unusual practice during that era. The risk that was taken paid off in spades. Also, Hitchcock enjoyed working with him very much. One of the reasons for this is that Stewart was not as picky as Cary Grant, who was also one of his frequent leading men. In spite of this, Wendell Corey, who played the skeptical detective, asserted that Stewart could still end a scene with a single icy glare if he was in disagreement with the situation. However, the actors in Rear Window were not the only ones responsible for its creation. Grace Kelly herself had a significant impact on the screenwriter, John Michael Hayes, who was responsible for the film. She was not a character in the first version of the short story. Lisa was conceived from the ground up, with Kelly's grace and power serving as the point of inspiration. Before beginning work on the role, Hayes spent time with her and even borrowed lines from his own wife in order to give Lisa a personality that was unique to her. While we are discussing sources of motivation, do you remember Lars Thorwald, the individual who is suspected of committing murder? Raymond Burr was cast in the role, but the actor designed his appearance to resemble David O. Selznick, the producer, whom Alfred Hitchcock detested. There were the glasses, the silver hair, and even the posture of hunching over. This was Hitchcock's cinematic way of showing his disapproval to an old adversary. To tell you the truth, that kind of silly behavior only serves to improve the movie. Still, despite all of the technique, Rear Window is also effective on a more profound level. Observation is the subject of this film. Regarding the way in which we project our anxieties and cravings onto the lives of other people, every neighbor that Jeff observes is a metaphor for something related to love, loneliness, or the existence of a domestic life. They are the newlyweds who are unable to refrain from touching each other, irrespective of the fact that she eats dinner by herself with fictitious dates. All of the dancers' potential suitors, a couple who constantly argue with each other. Dog lovers are those, every one of them observed, analyzed, and evaluated without ever being aware of it. In the beginning, even Stella, Jeff's nurse, reprimands him for being a peeping Tom. However, she eventually becomes hooked on the idea herself. So does Lisa. The audience participates in the activity. As soon as Thorwald's dog passes away, and he does not react, we, along with them, become suspicious regarding the situation. The tension reaches its peak in the third act of the movie when Lisa is caught breaking into Thorwald's apartment, causing the tension to explode. Jeff sits in his chair, helpless and unable to move, and watches. What is his sole arm? The flashbulbs of his camera. Through a series of bursts of orange light, he fires each one of them into Thorwald's face, causing him to become blind. There was no chance that color was chosen. For the purpose of testing it, Hitchcock flashed actual bulbs into the eyes of members of the crew. After they reported seeing orange spots, he instructed the effects team to be consistent with the color. In addition, the fall will follow. A second leg is broken as a result of Jeff being thrown out of the window. Up until the very end of the movie, he is even more unable to move than he was before. The situation, however, has changed. She is no longer attempting to make an impression on him. She is currently reading a fashion magazine while dressed in casual attire. A sense of calm acceptance permeates the atmosphere. There has been a return to reality for the voyeur. Now, moving on to that body. Hitchcock, who was never one to say goodbye in a typical manner, made the decision to celebrate in the most Hitchcockian way possible as the production came to a close. A cake was presented to Georgine Darcy, who had spent the entire shoot dancing, lounging, and being admired from the window of her apartment. Now, this is not any old cake. In addition to being anatomically accurate, it was sculpted in the shape of her own body, complete with curves, and the cast and crew devoured it. In all seriousness, that is not a movie legend. The occurrence of that was true. There was a tribute, there was a prank, and it was completely bizarre. However, it is appropriate. In a movie that is all about objectification, detachment, and projection, it is almost poetic that the set was wrapped with the crew literally consuming the image of the woman that they had spent a month watching. Indeed, it is creepy, but it is also kind of perfect. In addition, it firmly establishes Rear Window not only as an outstanding thriller, but also as a movie that was well aware of what it was doing, right up until the very last bite. Now is the time for you to provide feedback. Which of the stories would you want to be a part of if you were forced to live in one of those apartments that are located across Jeff's courtyard? What's up, Miss One Heart? Who is the dancer? Those who adore dogs? Please let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to hit the bell, like, and subscribe to the channel so that you never miss an opportunity to get a glimpse behind the scenes of Hollywood's most iconic films.